Okay, we'll start with this. A glimpse into what could be the next chapter in the career of Natasha Jonas, who has become the first black female boxing manager in British boxing history.
I feel like this could be Natasha's last year in the sport of boxing.
As a boxer, as a champion, could be her last year or close to it. Ms. Great Britain continues barrier-breaking tradition as she becomes the first black female to obtain a manager's license from the BBBOC. Jonas features in latest episode of Sky Sports' new Social First series editions, which releases today. London, England, trailblazing female boxer Natasha Jonas continues to write history as she becomes the first black woman to obtain a manager's license from the BBBOC. I'm still expecting to see Natasha Jonas fight Michaela Mayer.
We've already seen an expressed interest from both sides to do that fight, and the network relationship exists between them.
Between the people at Top Rank, whose UK broadcast partner just so happens to be Sky Sports. Sky Sports, who's in bed with Boxer, the network relationship exists to where that fight can happen. For now, a pioneer in women's boxing, Jonas hails from a sporting family. Her sister plays professional football and made history as the first female boxer on Team Great Britain, and the first woman to represent Great Britain in boxing when she entered the ring at the 2012 Olympic Games in London, England. She made history yet again last year when she became the first woman to win the prestigious British Boxer of the Year award from the BBBOC, following the likes of Lennox Lewis, Nassim Ahmed, and other British boxing legends. The two-weight world champion continues her trailblazing tradition by obtaining a manager's license to begin guiding the career of her young protege, Michaela Talion, who makes his professional debut later this month.
Schmicky Talon, not Michaela Talion.
Natasha Jonas has proven herself a capable fighter, one of the best. I think that goes without saying. She's a two-weight world champion, but she's also proven herself a shrewd businesswoman, and I have no doubts that's what led her to managing fighters moving forward. All my life, I've always believed in myself, and I've never allowed myself to give up. I've not consciously set out to be first to do anything. I just knew that I wanted to break down barriers and not be scared to do anything, just because it hadn't been done before, said Jonas. That being said, one thing I do like about being the first is that it makes you part of history, and nobody can take that away from you. In addition to her illustrious career in the ring, Natasha is deeply involved in the community, fulfills parental duties, and holds a prominent role as a pundit and commentator for Sky Sports Boxing.
Natasha Jonas has unique insights.
Knows both sides of the business, I think, knows how important it is to have the right people in your corner, developing your career and guiding it. Having defeated Candy Wyatt earlier this year to capture the IBF World Welterweight crown and become a two-weight world champion, Jonas is looking forward to getting back in the ring and further establishing herself as one of the leading figures in British boxing. I think that Michaela Mayer fight I talked about, maybe it goes down towards the end of this year, though we're almost at the end, so maybe it goes down at the beginning of next year, the first quarter. I don't think Tasha's going to be around much longer, and that's what this heralds, this endeavor into managing boxers and not just being one.
She made out all right.
The group of fighters that ended up migrating from Matchroom and DAZN over to Boxer and Sky Sports, mixed reviews, mixed results, mixed success. You can say that Tasha Jonas is one of the ones that made out all right. We can't really say that about Lawrence Okolie. Things haven't worked out for him. Joshua Buatsi has yet to see any substantial benefit from having crossed over. He's going to be in action this weekend against Dan Aziz, but you can say that Tasha, more so than some others, made the right choice, made the right decision. Her insights, her perspective is what led her to make that decision. Why stay on Matchroom and DAZN as an opponent, just an opponent for the fighters they're invested in, when you can carve out your own lane, do your own thing, where you're treated like the marquee fighter, where you're treated like the marquee attraction.
That's what she did.
And it worked out because at Sky Sports and Boxer, they rolled out the red carpet for her in a way that perhaps they didn't roll it out over there at Matchroom and DAZN. And that's not saying that Matchroom and DAZN didn't give her opportunities. They did, but she wasn't getting the exact same treatment at Matchroom that she started to get over there at Boxer. If nothing else, Tasha has proven that she's going to do what's right for her. And I think that's the same mentality she will carry over into her managerial career. Tasha doesn't look it, but but she's getting up there in age.
She's not gonna fight forever.
And I don't expect her to. Even before this news was announced, I figured that Tasha's only got 1 or 2 more fights left before she hangs them up.
Perhaps.
That in all the same ways Tasha did what was right for her in her own career, that's the mentality that she will have towards her fighters. She will do what is right for them and their careers, irrespective of what the boo birds and naysayers might think. Tasha is a great fighter, and I'll be sad to see her go, but it's nice to see she has something to fall back on. And just in keeping with the theme of all things boxer and Sky Sports, newly crowned WBO champion Chris Billam-Smith may face Matthias Masternak in early December, fighting under the Boxer banner. Boxer, who just inked a U.S. broadcast deal with the people over there at Peacock/NBC.
Strange that they didn't ink a deal with the people over there at ESPN. The network ties are there.
Chris Billam-Smith appears to be set for a voluntary defense before he is ordered to face his mandatory challenger. BoxingScene.com has confirmed that the reigning WBO Cruiserweight titleist is due to put his belt on the line in early December, before this year is out. The frontrunner to land the assignment is Poland's Matthias Masternak, who has reportedly signed the challenge for the title, according to Ring Polska. Billam-Smith won the title in a 12-round decision over Olympian and previously unbeaten titleist Lawrence Okolie this past May in his hometown of Bournemouth, England. There were talks of a rematch between the former training stablemates, though Masternak has since emerged as the likely candidate to face the 33-year-old Brit. What that essentially means is that even though Lawrence Okolie had a rematch clause, he was reported to have had one. I guess they talked him out of it. They must have.
Crossing over to Boxer has not worked out for Lawrence Okolie.
It was acknowledged during the WBO's convention that Billam-Smith was permitted to advance with the voluntary title fight, as mandatory would be due after that, with countryman Richard Riakporhe presently top-ranked at cruiserweight. Both boxers presently fight under the Boxer banner. Riakporhe beat Billam-Smith via a 10-round split decision in a July 2019 matchup of unbeaten prospects. Masternak has won 6 in a row since an October 2018 points loss to Uniel Dorticos in their World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweight Tournament quarterfinal matchup in Orlando, Florida. The 36-year-old Pole has not fought since a 12-round unanimous decision over previously unbeaten Jason Watley last October 29th in Poland.
They must have talked Lawrence Okolie out of it.
They must have, because it was initially reported that Lawrence Okolie did have a right to a second fight. He did have the right to a rematch.
He did.
And instead of fighting Lawrence in that rematch, he's going to be fighting Matthias Masternak. The year-plus long layoff ahead of his potential first career title fight is in part due to his being pulled from a mandatory title challenge versus lineal IBF Cruiserweight champion Jai Opetaia. The matter was due to head to a purse bid before his team pulled him out from the bout, with the belief at the time that he was next in line to face Billam-Smith in October. When you compare those two champions, those two challenges for what would be the challenger, Matthias Masternak, Chris Billam-Smith is a more limited fighter than Jai Opetaia, IBF and Ring Magazine champion. He's
a more limited fighter than Jai Opetaia. He's been beaten before. He can be beaten again. If you're Matthias Masternak and you have to choose between Jai Opetaia and Chris Billam-Smith, the Chris Billam-Smith fight is a more winnable fight.
Compared to the Jai Opetaia fight, it is. I mean, a crafty, mobile, athletic southpaw with speed and power who's durable.
See what the hierarchy of thought was. Both Matthias Masternak and Richard Riakporhe were in line to face Jai Opetaia, and the both of them withdrew.
First, it was Matthias that withdrew from the Jai Opetaia fight. Then, it was Richard Riakporhe who was the man behind him, the next available highest-ranked contender, Jai Opetaia.
He's a much craftier boxer than Chris Billam-Smith, with a higher ceiling, and he's younger, so you can see what happened.
I've got a few thoughts on this, and I want to start off by saying that it's not a foregone conclusion. It's not a lock that Chris Billam-Smith beats Matthias Masternak. Matthias Masternak, comparatively, is a much more experienced guy than Chris Billam-Smith. I think Chris had the best fight of his career with Lawrence Okolie. He was in rare form. He was.
But it's not a foregone conclusion that he beats this guy. This guy's got more fights, more rounds in the bank, more experience. He can punch. He's durable. I remember him. I remember Matthias Masternak.
And that's the first thing. The second thing is that if the WBO have allowed
they're letting him.
Chris Billam-Smith to have a voluntary before this year is out, it's strange that that voluntary isn't being used to give Lawrence his rematch. Well, maybe not so strange, maybe not, because I told you, the the worst thing that could happen for Sky Sports and Boxer is they do that rematch between Lawrence and Chris, and Lawrence ends up winning. I hate to say this, but Lawrence is bad for business. Nobody wants to see him fight.
You guys remember a few months ago when he made his Boxer debut? There were people walking out of the David Light fight. There were people walking out because they were bored to death.
When he was still in the process of trying to leave Matchroom for Boxer, a lot of things were said. They tried to vilify Eddie Hearn, they tried to vilify Matchroom, accused them of mistreating Lawrence Okolie and not paying him what he's worth and all these different things. But look at what happened. He goes over to Boxer, he ends up as the away fighter.
They gave Chris Billam-Smith home field advantage.
You get beat, but you've got a rematch clause, but where's your rematch? What is Boxer doing for you to get you your second fight, to get you your rematch? That you vilified Matchroom is not treating you right, but are the people at Boxer, is that what they're doing?
Tell you what it was. You went over there thinking the grass was greener on the other side, and you ended up stepping in dog shit, my friend.
Dog shit. Fucking dog shit. Don't you see what they're saying? That even if Chris Billam-Smith pulls it off against Masternak in December, he doesn't fight Lawrence after that. He fights Richard Riakporhe.
So much for the big bad Eddie theory. Seems to me like he was getting treated better over at Matchroom than he is now at Boxer.
There was a story that they had signed WBA champion Arsene Goulamarian, but currently, not only is Arsene immersed in a legal battle with his old promoter, he's under orders to face his mandatory challenger, Uniel Dortico, so it doesn't look like Lawrence is getting a crack at him or any of those other Boxer fighters. I don't know. Maybe Lawrence is gonna move up to heavyweight.
Maybe.
Smith versus Masternak is a good fight, and the winner, whoever it is on the hook to face Richard Riakporhe, yet another Boxer fighter. That's basically saying that even if Chris Billam-Smith loses the title, Richard Riakporhe might be able to get it back, bring it back over to the Boxer side of things, because as stated, whoever wins, they have to fight him after that. He's the mandatory challenger. For a time, it seemed like the people at Boxer were working on making a fight between Richard and Lawrence Okolie, but Lawrence is out of the picture. By all accounts, he's not in that scene anymore.
And it goes back to what I said in my previous segment. Some fighters benefited more than others from crossing over to Boxer. Lawrence Okolie was not one of them.
And finally, upstairs at heavyweight, Eddie Hearn says the Wilder fight, realistically, is not going to happen until either March or April. And given how things have been, I'd sooner expect the fight to happen in April than in March, because they're talking about getting Anthony out there in either December or January. Eddie Hearn has continually maintained that he and Wilder's advisor, Shelley Finkel, are fielding potential offers from other countries. He really wants to, Hearn said of Joshua in an interview with IFL TV. We've been on calls with him all week. There's a lot happening with the IBF situation. We will have to see. I think he's going to fight in December or January. I think the Wilder fight, realistically, is not going to happen until March or April at the latest. But he wants to fight. He wants to go back to camp and asked us to try and make him a fight for December. Whether that spills into January, we will see.
My thoughts.
Eddie Hearn, when talking about this fight, talks from it from a perspective to where he's got to do it, he's got to deliver it, but he shouldn't feel guilty if there are delays, and he shouldn't feel guilty if it doesn't happen for a number of reasons. For starters, both teams were on board to do the fight, but it's the Saudis who withdrew. It's the Saudis whose commitment wavered. That's neither Anthony's fault or Wilder's. He mentioned the possibility of Joshua fighting the IBF's #1 contender, Filip Prgovic, another Matchroom fighter, in the event that the IBF title becomes vacant, but that possibility is dimmed since the IBF recently declared Otto Wallin the #2 contender for the heavyweight belt. Joshua sits at #3. What he could do when it comes to that is do the Wallin versus Hrgovic fight, and whoever wins, they'll be in position to pick up the IBF title if it becomes vacant. That's an ongoing situation that won't come to a head until some point next year.
You should see about offering Otto a deal. I heard that Otto Wallin is no longer with Dmitry Salita. If he's a network and promotional free agent, he would be a great addition to the Matchroom stable.
And a great option for Anthony Joshua next year. If he were to fight Filip Prgovic and beat Filip Prgovic in that scenario, you would have all the bases covered. At the end of the day, whether the Wilder versus Joshua fight happens or not, it's not actually Anthony Joshua's fault. or Eddie Hearn's, irrespective of people want to believe, Wilder publicly walked away from a $100 million offer to do the fight years ago. He admitted that himself, that he was going to get more money to fight AJ than what he stood to make fighting Fury again. But he chose what he chose, and the Americans refuse to hold him responsible for that. That's on them. That's their problem. None of this has stopped Anthony Joshua from becoming one of the top earning fighters in the sport. He's on a Forbes list. Wilder isn't.
You have to stop being a people pleaser at some point.
At Deontay Wilder's age, he has to prioritize this fight. This has to be the focus of all his efforts because it's the last chance for him to make a lot of fucking money. He by himself here in America ain't got that much drawing power. And that's what the Robert Helenius fight showed us late last year. For Deontay Wilder, of course this is going to be the focus. But for Anthony Joshua, who's younger and still has more good years left, Wilder is not his only option.
And if Anthony wants to fight in either December or January, let him, because activity helps.
It's clear as day that Deontay Wilder is ready to cash out. That's why he hasn't fought anyone, not even a ham and egger, the entirety of this year. You say that, well, Andy Ruiz priced himself out. He was supposed to fight that guy. But if that didn't work out, why didn't you just find someone else? Anyone else, just to keep busy and keep the tools sharp. And it's because Deontay Wilder's not really coming to fight. He's coming for a check.
If you don't want to understand that, then don't fucking understand it. Who cares?
They've been making excuses for this guy's piss-poor resume and his piss-poor body of work, him walking away from this fight. More than once. They've been doing this for years. At some point, you have to realize there's no pleasing those people, no convincing them. So don't try to, and don't waste time on it. If the Wilder fight happens next year, great. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. There's a legitimate possibility that Anthony Joshua could line himself up for an alphabet title at some point next year with the winner of Otto Wallin versus Filip Hrgovic. Because Fury versus Usyk, there's a two-way rematch clause involved in that. If there's a second fight, the winner might end up losing the IBF title. They may end up forfeiting that belt, at which point the winner of Wallin versus Hrgovic may become champion. And Anthony can fight him, whoever it is.
Deontay Wilder's not in it for legacy, the belts anymore. That's not what he's fighting for.
If the ship has sailed on Joshua versus Wilder, you don't stand on the docks jerking yourself off crying about it. You move on. You fucking move on.
I am a little bit sick of hearing about it, but that's because the interviewers keep asking about it.
People don't want to accept that the reason the fight hasn't materialized is because Saudi withdrew from doing the fight. They're the ones who pulled the funding. They want to put that on Eddie Hearn. They want to put that on Joshua. There's no pleasing those people.
These guys are fucking stupid, man. There's no fixing that.